Viewpoint on noyantapantv, and I'm Benyamin Poghosyan, Senior Research Fellow at Armenia. Today we will discuss the results of the snap presidential elections in Iran. On July 5th, on Friday, the runoff took place for the Iranian presidential elections, and the reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian was elected president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He got approximately 53.5% of votes, and he defeated conservative candidate Saeed Jalili, who got approximately 46.5% of votes. And the turnaround was approximately 50%, significant increase compared to the first round of elections, where only 40% of population voted. So what does it mean for Iran to have the new president, and especially to have a reformist president who was supported by a reformist camp, including figures such as former Iranian President Mahmoud Khatami, who was president from 1997 until 2005, as well as Hassan Rouhani, who was president from 2013 until 2021, as well as Javad Zarif, who was the foreign minister of Iran under Rouhani presidency, and who was one of the instrumental figures to push forward the nuclear deal, which Iran reached with permanent 5+1 in 2015, and which paved the way for the cancellation of some of sanctions, international sanctions, and also some of US sanctions, starting from January 2016. Then, of course, President Trump withdrew from the deal in May 2018, and relations between the West and Iran started to deteriorate. After the election of Ibrahim Raisi in summer 2021, and especially after the start of Russia-Ukraine war and the launch of Russia-Iran military technical cooperation, including supply of Iranian weapons to Russia, the West-Iran relations reached the lowest level probably since 1979, or at least since Khatami won the presidential election in 1997. And there was a lot of discussions in the West about the establishment of so-called axis of upheaval, like Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, as a new force which are trying to push forward or to revise the existing liberal international world order, and also to fight against US hegemonic positions in the world. First of all, let's fix that president in Islamic Republic of Iran has no too much power. For example, if we compare it with some European countries, we may argue that president in Iran has the same power as, for example, prime minister in France, while the real power is in the hands of supreme leader, which somehow can be compared probably to the president of some other countries. However, the fact that the real power is in the hand of the supreme leader does not mean that president has no power. First of all, president has power for domestic politics. And if we look into the presidential debates, both before the first tour and also before the runoff, these debates were not about like complex, complicated geopolitical issues like multipolar world or the transformation of world order, post-unipolar world, and etc. Mostly, candidates were debating about domestic issues related to the everyday life of Iranians. Everything started from inflation, prices, and even waste management. Also, we have to take into account that despite the fact that president has no much power in foreign policy, but in any case, also presidential administration plays a role. For example, the fact that Iran was able to reach a deal with the West in 2015 was partly also due to the presidential administration of Hassan Rouhani, and as I mentioned, due to the fact that the foreign minister was Javad Zarif, who in general perceives, of course, not a pro-Western actor, because in current Islamic Republic of Iran, you cannot be a politician, you cannot hold an official position and be pro-Western, but let's call them pragmatic. The second issue, many people now are putting doubts on legitimacy of Islamic Republic. And many argue that the declining number of people who are voting in any elections, and also the growth of number of people who are just invalidating their ballots, these indicators that legitimacy of the Islamic Republic is going down in the eyes of many Iranians. From this perspective, for example, in 2021 presidential election, which was won by Ibrahim Raisi, it was the first time when the invalid ballots took the second place. So Ibrahim Raisi won, but all other candidates received less number of ballots than invalidated ballots. And this was another indicator that legitimacy of Islamic Republic of Iran are going down. So from this perspective, the participation is really important. And of course, the first round, only 40%, was another indication that many Iran does not believe that the election may change anything. But then, as I mentioned, during the runoff, July 5th, we have approximately 50% of participation, which also somehow indicates that at least many Iranians hoped that if there will be change in presidential administration, it could bring some changes, both for domestic policy and also for international policy. Now, what may happen then? Of course, now, when we have reformist president in Islamic Republic of Iran, chances are high that Iran will try to reach out to the West, at least trying to restore the nuclear deal or the part of nuclear deal. Let's not forget that when Biden came to the White House in January 2021, negotiations were launched between United States and Iran to restore the nuclear deal. There were hopes that these negotiations will be finished by summer 2021 presidential election, as far as Rouhani was president. However, this negotiation failed, and in the last 2 years, starting at least from summer 2022, there were no active negotiations. Of course, by the end of 2024, there could be no active negotiations because United States are fully covered with the presidential elections. And many now ask, okay, now we have reformist government in Iran, but what if Trump is going to win November 2024 presidential election and coming back to White House in January 2025? What does it mean for US-Iran relations? Definitely, we all know that Trump has a very clear anti-Iranian position, but however, even if Trump is in the White House, my understanding is that the establishment or the presence of the reformist government and reformist president probably will decrease the likelihood of any large-scale military clash between United States and Iran. And definitely, Mr. Poghosyan should also take into account what's going on in the Middle East. Israel-Hamas war continues. There are concerns that Israel may launch a large-scale invasion of Lebanon to start the new war against Hezbollah, maybe even bigger war than was in 2006. And of course, all these are issues which requires action or reaction from Iran. And yes, definitely, Supreme Leader and Revolutionary Guard Corps will have final say in foreign policy issues, but still, Mr. Poghosyan matter. Also, it's interesting to see how will be Iran's new policy towards Russia and China. As I mentioned, under IC, Iran was fully supporting Russia, supplying weapons, and in the West there was a perception that some sort of alliance, or at least strategic partnership, would emerge between Iran, Russia, and China. It's interesting to see what will be the configuration under Poghosyan, and especially if Trump comes to power, if Trump tries to make some sort of deal with Russia, or at least if Trump tries to freeze the war in Ukraine, trying to prevent the more and more deepening partnership between Russia and China, then this also may somehow influence Iranian policy towards Russia and Iranian policy in the South Caucasus. Regarding Armenia, there were a lot of discussions that Poghosyan, who also, by the way, have a 50% Azeri origin and 50% of Kurdish origin, there were some discussions in Armenia that Poghosyan may somehow not take into account Iranian red lines regarding South Caucasus and Armenia in particular. We all know that Iran's position was very clear. Iran will not tolerate occupation of Syunik by Azerbaijan, Iran will not tolerate the opening of Zangezur corridor, and Iran will not tolerate the cutting Iran from Black Sea and the cutting or preventing the Iran-Armenian border from functioning. Again, as I mentioned, definitely these type of questions will be decided by Supreme Leader and also by Revolutionary Guard Corps. And here I don't believe that Poghosyan will make significant changes, because no Iranian leader can say, okay, I'm happy to see Syunik and Azerbaijani occupation, and I'm happy to see common border between Azerbaijan and Turkey, I'm happy to see fully Turkish domination of South Caucasus. So, while there could be some changes in Iran's policy towards Russia, for example, or Iran's policy towards China, but I don't believe that there will be significant changes in Iranian policy towards the South Caucasus, especially regarding the Syunik, Zangezur corridor, etc. Of course, as Supreme Leader is 85 years old, a lot of discussion now also about the transition in Iran. Who is going to be the next Supreme Leader? And here is a very interesting situation, because former President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash in May 2024, was perceived as one of the key candidates to become a new Supreme Leader. So the death of Ibrahim Raisi not only brings a new presidential administration, reformist presidential administration, but also created more complex and complicated situation towards the succession regarding who is going to be next supreme leader, because now it's not very clear. And here I think the key will be to see when and how the succession is going to take place. Definitely, Masoud Pezeshkian has zero chances, even legally, to become the next supreme leader, so he's out of the race. But maybe this is also the privilege for him, which means that he has no personal interest to be part of this big game. But if we are speaking about long-term direction of Iranian foreign policy and security policy, both its relation with the West, with Russia, with China, on Iran's position in South Caucasus, definitely the key is who is going to be the next supreme leader. However, regardless of the complex and complicated situation, we can fix that definitely a new president and reformist government in Iran will make some changes both in domestic policy, but also in foreign policy, probably trying to reach out to the West, probably somehow trying to restrict or at least to slow the strong cooperation with Russia. But as I mentioned, I don't believe that there will be significant changes in Iran's policy in South Caucasus, at least as far as current supreme leader has this position. This is all for today, and we will meet soon.